We learn from sources that divestment and asset monetizations of PSUs will be given a big thrust in Budget 2019. Shireen Ban and Sapna Das join in with all of the details. Shireen, over to you.
Well, what we are given to understand is that there is going to be an aggressive push on the government's plan to disinvest as well as monetize assets of public sector units in Budget 2019. Now, remember, the disinvestment target has already been very aggressive in the previous term of the Modi government, and we are given to understand that it is going to get even more aggressive. Now, the priority will be that the public sector units that don't meet the 75% public float norms, their shares will be offloaded on a priority basis. There are about a dozen listed PSUs that don't meet the 75% norms as of now. So altogether, the government could look at netting about 15,000 crore rupees just by way of divesting shares to meet the public float norms. Outside of that, there will also be a plan to look at share sales across PSUs where the public float norms have in fact been met. Secondly, strategic disinvestment is, of course, on the agenda. That is something that there has been cabinet approval for. A list was drawn up in the previous term of the government. That will also be taken forward. And there will be a plan on asset monetization. Now, that asset monetization plan has been drawn up by the Niti Aayog, which basically looks at public sector units, what they hold in terms of land and buildings and what can be monetized. Also, brownfield operational assets, whether it's roads, pipelines, mobile towers, whether those can be offloaded. Financial assets, as we mentioned, equity shares, debt securities, and other hybrid structure financial assets. All of that will be part of the asset monetization plan that has been drawn up by the Niti Aayog. But we are given to understand that this is still a matter under discussion between Niti Aayog as well as the Finance Ministry, specifically on the asset monetization part. But the assumption is, or the hope is on part of the government, that all of this could be given more shape during the course of the budget announcement on the 5th of July. There are some reservations that the Finance Ministry has with the asset monetization plan that's been put together by Niti Aayog, and I think Sapna can give us more details on that.
Hi. So what we're given to understand as of now, and I think to an extent, some bit of it has already been reported in the press, but what we're given to understand is that probably this entire matter is still at a very nascent stage. All the approvals for the asset monetization, the procedure and the mechanism, all of this had actually unfolded way back in February. The budget, this had been cleared by the cabinet at that point in time, I suppose towards the end of February. And after that, various instructions have been sent out. So if you go through that mechanism, it's a very detailed procedure that has already been put into place. But we are given to understand that probably the administrative ministry, we should play a very critical role in the as far as asset monetization is concerned. Probably they have not really been consulted fully. So unless and until that really takes place and that really happens, it will be very difficult to comment as to what the exact roadmap is going to be. That's one. Second, since it's at a very nascent stage, what we're given to understand is that probably, it's a bit early to speak about what kind of revenue generation this may lead to. Again, going back to the mechanism that has been put into the public domain, here it says again two things, and particularly regarding Niti Aayog. A, that, twice a year or something like that, Niti Aayog can come back and give its revised recommendations. And the second critical part that it talks about is that, even once an asset monetization is approved at the highest level by the alternate mechanism on disinvestment, as of now headed by the finance minister and a lot of other groups which will be looking into it, that the entire process that will be undertaken by the CPSE finally, it's a 12-month process. So, to talk about the revenue implication as of now would be a bit early. But, nothing stops the government from outlining its aspirations, and we have to wait and watch and see how it goes. As Shireen has pointed out, the terms of reference for asset monetization are very detailed and very wide. Almost everything is covered under that. So how that really pans out will be very interesting to watch.
Right, Sapna, thanks a lot for Sapna and Shireen, thanks a lot for joining us and giving us the details that the government is going ahead and indeed looking at monetizing some of their public sector units. Meanwhile, an eye out on the markets. We're witnessing a firm sell-off in a lot of the mid-cap and mid-cap names. We have Voltas, which is at the low point of the day. Shrey Infra is now moved to the low point of the day. Divi Labs as well as Sun TV also. All 3 or 4 of them are at the lower end of today's trading range, while the Nifty is still holding lower by about 100 points. But let's move on and answer all your stock and investment related queries. We have Prakash Gaba and Shahina Mukadam in with us to answer all your stock queries. So let's go straight to a query which is coming in. Remember, it's Friday, so it's ladies special. We answer queries coming in from all our female viewers. Saili Shinde writes to us from Pune, wants to know the long-term future of Eicher Motors. Prakash, the stock has corrected from 30,000 plus levels. From here on, from a long-term perspective, how do you like the charts?
I like the stock from a long-term perspective, but short-term there is some pain here. There's a very strong support in the vicinity of 15,000. If it sees a slide, it doesn't bother me. But I would say from a long-term perspective, yes, it's still a hold, but there is some pressure in the selling in the near term.
Okay, well, Shaina, what would you recommend on Eicher Motors?
I would recommend a hold on Eicher. I believe short-term pain, I agree with Gabaji that there is pain because we have seen a slowdown in overall volumes, and there has been some booking of profits by some large investors. But I would still give a hold. I would continue holding if I'm a long-term investor, because the company has developed a lot of, they have got good engines in their pipeline which are actually well placed to meet the Euro 6 norms as and when they come out. So I think, it is one company that is well placed to meet those challenges and move ahead over the next 1 to 2 years. So I believe for the shorter term, there will be pain. You may not see a good return, but longer term holder should do well.
Okay, all right. So that's on Eicher Motors. But let's get in another query then. Miss S. Saraf writes to us from Hyderabad, and she holds 400 shares of Meghmani Organics at 88. Long-term investor, and wants to know whether to hold or sell that particular stock. Well, for Meghmani, Shaina has not done much this year, and neither has it done much in the past 2 odd years. The highest price we saw for the stock was 122. It's been a correction post that. And, our query is about 400 shares at 88 rupees. What would you recommend?
I think it's very difficult for the investor to get back to that level based on the fundamentals. Basically, while they did grow by about 18% in profits for the current year, for the previous year, FY19 versus the previous year, I think there is such a lot happening on the global front, and chemicals is one industry that really gets impacted and very fast. And I think with the trade war between China and US, it will, I see a correction in overall prices for chemicals. I would avoid chemical stocks, and Meghmani, I think they had this little bit of rally because the NCLT approved the merger with its subsidiaries. So I think that has reflected in the decent numbers that we saw. So I wouldn't extrapolate it, and I would actually sell.
All right, Shaina, we'll also keep an eye out on what the promoters do with the stake in one of their subsidiaries, where there was a bit of a corporate governance mishap in Meghmani. Another query we have, Padmaja Sista writes to us from Hyderabad, holds about 500 shares of granules at around 131 rupees for the last 1 year. Wants to know what to do. Granules from 131, it's gone to around 93. Do you think it's good enough, or looking to go down further?
I would exit. I don't like the chart structure. I see some more pain here. There's a lot of distribution pattern in the upper regions, so I would exit.
Okay, all right. So that's on granules. We have another query now. We have Mrs. Sheila D, who writes to us from Bangalore. She holds 700 shares of Indocin, which is bought at 1587, and since 1 week. She's a medium-term investor, and she wants to know whether to hold or sell. Well, what would you recommend, considering that the merger has come through now with Bharat Financial? Shaina, what would you recommend for Indocin? Because a bit of their portfolio in terms of loan book is going to change, consolidated, cost of funds as well as net interest margins will be different. What's your sense?
Actually, that is precisely the reason why I would be actually booking profits and selling from IndusInd Bank. 4th July is the book closure date, the record date for the merger. And I think Bharat Financials comes with its own set of problems in terms of high valuation. Everything will change. You have a change in the asset quality. We'll all have to figure out how the numbers pan out. There is already an impact in terms of the liquidity is tight, various factors, the core business in terms of the auto sector is impacted for IndusInd. So I would actually sell and relook at this after 6 months when the dust settles.
All right, Shaina, thanks a lot for that. Meanwhile, just keep an eye on a couple of these consumption names. So we have Kajaria, which is at the low point of the day, and we have Emami. Emami is now lower by 6%. Remember, this morning we got news that the promoters have pledged 0.2% of the company's equity, and this comes over and above 0.05% or so that they had pledged yesterday as well. More importantly, Emami last quarter, remember, the promoters sold 10% of their personal equity to reduce their stakes. So let's see. Prakash, any chart check on Emami?
Emami, let me see Emami. Well, yes, I think it's weak. It should be dumped. Falling like a stone.
All right, so that's quite a decisive call on Emami coming in there. But Prakash as well as Shaina, we're going to thank you on that note. Thanks very much for joining in, taking us through all of those queries. We'll take a break, but the latest episode from our Mutual Fund Simplified series coming up next. Stay tuned.